Alright, so Transformers Rise of the Beast has just come out, and the plot for it is pretty much this. During the 90s, a new faction of Transformers, the Maximals, joined the Autobots as allies in the battle for Earth. Alright, let's get into the good parts of this movie, and the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the action. I believe Michael Bay is still producing these movies, and his influence is definitely carved into this movie in terms of the action. Whether it's the chase scenes or just the Transformers going at it, I thought that the action for the most part for those scenes was really well done. Although sometimes there are certain scenes where it's really hard to tell what's going on, but that's only for like a couple of scenes. The Transformers and humans in this movie are really well balanced, and although the humans in this movie are pretty surface level, I think they get the job done. And for me personally, I never felt like the human characters in this movie were taking away from the Transformers. And compared to the other Transformers movies in this franchise, I think this one is definitely one of the best when it comes to balancing the humans and Transformers in the story. The voice actors in this movie are all great, like Peter Cullen and Michelle Yeoh, but the person that actually stood out to me the most was actually Pete Davidson. And obviously, if you know who Pete Davidson is, he's obviously going to be playing the comedic relief, but he actually had some pretty touching moments as well. The comedy is also really well done in this movie. Obviously, Pete Davidson was great in this as well in terms of the comedy. Anthony Ramos was really funny as well, and everyone in the cast had a moment to be really funny, but Anthony Ramos and Pete Davidson were the main funny people in this movie for me. The direction in this movie is also a huge standout for me. Obviously, Stephen Caple Jr. made Creed 2, which is personally my favorite Creed movie, and he takes that storytelling into this movie as well. He does a good job of paying respects to obviously the Michael Bay Transformers movies, but also to Bumblebee and Travis Knight, who made Bumblebee as well, but he also makes sure to put his own personal imprint on Rise of the Beast. The last thing I'll talk about before I get into my criticisms is the CGI. Whether the Transformers movies have been good or bad, all of them have had really good CGI. And although Rise of the Beast didn't blow my socks off in terms of the CGI, I still thought it was really well done. Alright, let's get into some criticisms for this movie, and the first one is the lack of Beast in this movie. They are in the movie, but they're not in the movie as much as you would think they would be in for a movie called Rise of the Beast. And in terms of the plot, the Beasts are a huge part of the plot, but in terms of their actual characters, they're really just not in the movie as much as you would want them to be. The pacing in this movie is really fast. This movie has no fat on it at all. It's always going from point A to point B to point C to point D. It's just always going. And I think for the most part, for a summer blockbuster movie, that works, but you also do sacrifice a deeper story because of it. This movie does the whole we need to find a certain artifact before certain characters do. And although it didn't bother me for the movie, because I've seen it in the other 500 Transformers movies we've gotten, it was really hard for me to care at certain moments because it was very predictable. The last thing I'll say before I give my score is the fact that certain characters get cut off. And I'm not talking about the human characters because there's only two main human characters, but I'm talking about the Transformers. Whether it's the main villain that we get in this movie, he does not get cut off, but his little henchmen or minions, they really don't get much screen time at all. There are certain Autobots in this movie that don't get a lot of screen time. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it, but Bumblebee doesn't get a lot of screen time in this movie due to certain things that happen, and it will make more sense if you've seen the movie. But just characters like RC and Wheeljack, they definitely get sidelined in this movie, and we get more screen time for Optimus and Mirage. And I think those decisions helped out the movie, but it would have been cool to see RC and Wheeljack and Bumblebee just a tad bit more. And overall, guys, I think Rise of the Beast is just a perfectly fine summer blockbuster movie, but compared to the other Transformers movies that we have gotten over the years, it is definitely a masterpiece, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6.5 out of 10.